Garden.
All right, welcome to Torture Garden. I'm Scott.
I'm Jimmy.
And today we are going to have a conversation that made Jimmy feel personally attacked when I mentioned it. And I tried politely
You should have included a trigger warning, Scott. I get very offended.
Here's the thing, is that, yes, Jimmy uses the word we're going to be talking about a lot. I'm not saying it's justified or not. In fact, it's just that it's a word people use a lot. And in many different contexts, but especially, musical, it happens a lot. And I kind of I don't have anything necessarily I want to explore, any specific points or argument I want to make. I just kind of want to talk about what does it mean when people call, someone's musical taste, specific albums, pretentious. What does it mean when they say something is pretentious? Because it's something that's thrown around a lot. And I feel like in the course of time where I've heard people use this to describe music, to describe any number of things, everyone uses the word differently. Like, it feels like the emphasis and what they're trying to get across isn't quite the same. So I guess a good way to kick it off is just like a definition of it.
Well, I actually have that. So
great. Let's do it.
I have two definitions from dictionary.com because they're no better website except for Wikipedia.
I'd say in terms of dictionary definitions, it's probably one of the best ones.
Yeah, but okay, so
I 5 out of 5.
I picked out two because I felt like they sort of picked out the most. So first one, the main one is characterized by assumption of dignity or importance, especially exaggerated or undeserved. Mm-hmm. And then the second one is making an exaggerated outward show, ostentatious.
Mm-hmm. And then I actually have one which I think is a little different, but obviously related, is attempting to impress by affecting greater importance, talent, culture, etc., than is actually possessed.
Yeah, so it's all basically like you sort of get the gist.
Yeah, so basically, the TLDR is what the person or the album is purporting about the music does not actually reflect the music and is meant to bring across that this album is better or more important than it actually is. So I think what interests me about that is that what might qualify as pretentious music kind of is on a sliding scale, because it depends where you come from. Like, the music that I would by no means classify as pretentious, I think other people would absolutely, say, that's just pretentious. Or more importantly, or kind of relatedly, I'm pretentious for listening to it, or they might assume that I think that like people who ironically listen to music, for example, I would say that's kind of pretentious because they think like it says something more about their character than it actually does.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like it's just as subjective as saying that.
Exactly. Yeah. But I do think that there are some examples, and maybe it's just enough people subjectively agreeing in the same direction that we could say this is like a good example. But I know Jimmy mentioned you mentioned you had some examples. The first thing that came to mind to me, and this I want to preface this by saying I really do love Lou Reed. I love a lot of his music.
I actually have the same note in mind.
And so. I might pick the album you're going to talk about, but Metal Machine Music, I think, is almost a universally agreed upon. This is a pretentious album. Ironically, Metal Machine Music actually was a precursor for drone music and harsh noise and stuff. I don't know if he meant to do that, but he actually ended up being an influence when really he was trying to... I think this is confirmed. I'm not sure if people extrapolated this from things he had said, but I think essentially he was trying to kind of parody or spoof, lampoon, if you will, metal music by making I think it's 4 20-minute tracks of just guitar feedback, and he was trying to make a statement that like metal is lesser or whatever, or that metal is just noise or whatever.
I think like if I remember correctly, his wording was like, "This is the eventual conclusion of metal."
Yes, which ironically, he actually wasn't. In some ways, he wasn't all wrong, because you have bands like Sun and whatnot that actually do kind of do a variation of what he did on that album. But
God,
the reason I would say it's definitely pretentious is because he's purporting to make a bigger statement about metal. Like, this is the like the slippery slope argument, and I don't know, like, it really, to me, I mean, hindsight, it doesn't really help, but like, to me, it really didn't do what he said it did. I guess that's what it really boils down to, is if your MO for making an album doesn't pan out. Because obviously, metal has been around for several more years, and that has not been the be-all, end-all of what metal as a genre is. In fact, it's gotten even more diverse than just guitar feedback. So
yeah, there's also screaming too.
Yeah, there's also vocals, exactly. But I think that is something that I think that it is really something that gets tacked to a lot of things Lou Reed has done. I mean, you have you have like Velvet Underground and Nico is, and I do love Lou Reed. I'm not trying to shit on him, but especially everything surrounding the fact that they partner with Andy Warhol and whatnot, and their debut album was like accompanied by partnering with a pop artist is kind of a little pretentious. It purports to say that like they are of a bigger standing in the music scene than they actually were. Because I don't think you can just burst. In general, most bands can't achieve that. I think they just kind of had the right combination at the right time and knew the right people. But anyway, I'm gonna stop shitting on Lou Reed because I actually really like Lou Reed. So I'm gonna leave that to Jimmy, who does not like him.
Yeah. I will like I respect the hell out of him, at least when it comes to his musical impact. But I just personally don't see why people liked him so much. And when people think of experimental music, I just don't understand why people think of him as experimental in any way. Yeah, but I mean, again, I'm definitely in the very minority of this. It's just my opinion. So, yeah. So what were you gonna say, Scott?
Well, I was just gonna see if you had anything else, because I think you mentioned you had that was just the main example I had. I think I have a few other ones, but I think you had a few other examples of what might be pretentious music.
Okay, so I'm going to preface this by saying that I think, for me personally, pretentious music is often synonymous with pseudo-intellectualism. That there are, because there are lots of artists that like to think that they're being very deep and smart by making certain music, doing certain statements with their art. And that's usually that really, really rankles me in just like the worst way possible. Mm-hmm. Just because like it's just the amount of ego in it really bothers me, and I think it's just stupid to say that this means this, like, definitively, and then to market that as, oh, like, look how amazing I am, so like, it's just, yeah, it really bugs me. But I think this one's gonna be, if people actually listen to this episode, people are really going to be pissed at this one. But Radiohead, I find Radiohead to be one of the most pretentious bands ever. And I should note that this isn't because of them as a band. This isn't because of their music. I think it's more because of their fans.
Yeah.
Because people think, oh, Radiohead's like the most experimental band ever. They're the greatest band of the world, and like, I'm not really debating that they're bad, but like they're a good band. I mean, I do enjoy Radiohead, but there's so much more experimental music. I think the only real claim that Radiohead has is that they're probably the most successful music act that has come into experimental music, or or at least briefly touched upon it in some way. I mean, obviously there's other ones, you know, Velvet Underground, Beatles, things like that. But I just like that really bugs me. I think it just bugs me when, you know, when artists or even fans just try to take, you know, something and, you know, build it up to these insane proportions and take all this huge meaning out of it. It's like Rick and Morty. Like, you know, I love Rick and Morty. Like, I would count it among my favorite TV shows without a doubt. I've seen every episode like at least 5 times. But you know, like, and there are some deep moments, and I'm not gonna deny that. But there are a lot of like, you know, it doesn't mean that that's all there is. Like, you know, if you want to even switch gears again and bring it over to like literature. You know, like, the whole idea of, like, literary fiction to me is that, like, oh, it has, like, a meaning to it, or there's some deep philosophical meaning, but it's like, you're totally forgetting about the artistry of it. You know, you're forgetting that, you know, people are taking time to write and put in certain words instead of other words, and, you know, making a text flow in a certain way, you know, and making characters that are fun, and making plots that are enjoyable. Like, you know, there's a lot more than just, oh, what philosophy can we reduce out of it?
Yeah.
So that's why, that's why I think when you get nebulous, when you get very nebulous with your meanings, I can sometimes get annoyed because sometimes the approach can be They know they're trying to do something deep. Like, okay, you're probably gonna not like this one, but Neurosis's album titles are I've always found them to be very very pretentious. Just honor found in decay, given to the rising. The track We All Rage in Gold, like I the way those things are titled, they give this idea that, oh, hey, there's some, you know, obscure esoteric meaning to this, but you need to figure it out. And but it's like, you know, like, I'm all up for ambiguity, like, you know, but there's a limit. There's just making something that sounds cool and is just meaningless. Yeah. And that's sort of what they're doing for me. Or, you know, like, another example, you know that Juju album, Promise, with the naked dude on it?
Yeah.
Holding the baby upside down. That's another one of those things that's like, you know, Jamie Stewart obviously thinks that there's some sort of meaning in that. And, I mean, really, at the end of the day, it's just a male prostitute naked holding a baby upside down. Like, you know, like, sometimes the curtains are just purple, you know, because they're purple. They not because, you know, Descartes was completely right and, you know, nothing can actually be, you know, legitimately said about this world. You know, it's just like, I always sort of you know, find just like a correlation for this between this and, like, you know, hermeneutics, or, you know, like an interpretation of art. But that's just me. I really get bothered by it.
No,
but yeah. Oh, so you go ahead.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of the art, I figured you were going to mention the artists you're going to mention, honestly. I mean, but both just in our you know, our conversations we've had over time, as well as just, I mean, I love Radiohead, and I love, you know, we'll start with Juju. Like, Juju is extraordinarily pretentious. Like, I'm a huge Juju fan. If you listen to any of their music, it's extraordinarily pretentious. It's like art pop at, like, its most. And, like, I love it. It's just, it's overly extravagant. It's indulgent. It's very much, you know, them performing what they want to perform.
Oh, yeah. I mean, dude, Fabulous Muscles is a great album. Like,
yeah.
No denying that.
And, you know, like, I like that. I like what they do, but I would never, like, if someone said that they were pretentious, like, I mean, I completely, you know, they definitely think, like, they're making art, and, like, what they're doing, they take it very, like, seriously. Whereas sometimes if you listen to it, it's just kind of, like, I remember I saw them live, and, like, they had this, like, freak out moment where he was, like, kicking the cymbals and, like, stuff, and it just was very much they were doing what they wanted to do. And, like, I mean, I loved it, and it was I thought it was great, but it definitely there wasn't any deeper meaning there. They were just kind of freaking out on stage, and it was enjoyable, and I liked it a lot, but, like, it wasn't some profound art statement.
Yeah, see, they like that's exactly what I'm meaning. Like, like it's sort of like performance art that like it's like okay, at what point are you just screaming at people?
Exactly.
Like,
But I'm really, really glad you brought up Radiohead, because I think they're an exceptional example about how pretension is kind of formed from both sides.
yep.
Because, and I think you're right that they are probably, I actually can't really think, and I might, after we hang up, maybe be like, oh shit, actually that's a good example. But they are probably one of the best examples, or one of the best kind of meeting points between popularity and experimentation. Like I think they really do, amongst all the like quote unquote experimental bands I know, they really are probably easily the most popular. And I think what happens with that is that, I don't know, you probably don't follow Fox News. I mean, I can't say I follow Fox News a lot, but
I don't follow the news in general.
But I know. Man. But did you see the recent story about them calling out Radiohead?
I saw that briefly. Yeah.
Well,
I did.
They covered
Coldplay.
Well, they covered the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees, and one of them is Radiohead this year. And it started out with one of their quote unquote culture reporters talking about how like all the only people she knows who like Radiohead are like sad, strange men or whatever. and then Johnny Greenwood like thought it was funny and he retweeted it. And then obviously a bunch of Radiohead's fans like, lashed out and was like, you just don't get it, like blah, blah, blah. And then they doubled down on one of their other hosts when they were covering the controversy they got. He said that Radiohead was watered down Coldplay, which is hilarious because anyone who knows music knows it's obviously the inverse. Like, I don't have anything against Coldplay at all, but like they just are trying to be Radiohead and like Sigur Rós and bands like that. Like that's just what they do.
Yeah.
And then I think my phone actually died before we got on the call, but apparently they try to make like a spoof video on Radiohead, like the Fox News Network spent time on this. And if you read the story, it's all ridiculous and it's all stupid, but I think it really speaks to the fact that it's kind of cyclical in the pretension that it creates and bolsters for Radiohead's image. Is you start out with people who gravitate towards them because they think, and for the mainstream and for mainstream rock, especially at the time, they came around the time when like grunge was kind of around and whatnot, and you had like indie rock and like bands like,
Arcade Fire,
stuff like that, and like then you have this Radiohead, which they were doing something different from bands like Nirvana or Oasis or stuff like that. Like they were, doing something a little bit weirder, which people who listen to mainstream rock obviously were not familiar with. But obviously, in terms of the grand scheme of experimental music, they are not at the top at all by any means. I love Radiohead, but they are not by any means the most experimental band out there, or not even close. But people believe that. Then you have other people who like mainstream music who think that it's too weird. And then you have this loop of people thinking that, the Fox News crowd and like the regular, middle America crowd who thinks that, oh, this is pretentious. Because like fucking someone on Fox News is not going to know who like John Zorn is. They're not going to know who Shoo Shoo is or whatever. They're not.
I mean, you never know, man.
You never know, but like your average Joe Smo who like listens to fucking like thinks like rock gets stopped with like Led Zeppelin and AC/DC. And I'm definitely stereotyping here, but that's it. That's what we're talking about. It's like these people who listen to regular rock, like they hear Radiohead and think, oh, it's like this whiny, like I don't like this. And then they think, oh, you're pretentious for liking this. It's like, it's not normal. Like it thinks it's better than it is, but it's just weird. I love how this is what like regular normal Americans sound like. Like this is a really weird accent.
little whining.
Yeah, I don't like it. But then of course you go back to the Radiohead fans. Oh, you just don't get it. It's deeper. You just don't get it. And then it goes back to them saying, oh, you're pretentious for saying that. And it just goes on and on and on. And I think that's really kind of what bolsters some bands' pretentious, their reputations, is because you have, and you mentioned Rick and Morty. That's a great example. Is you have, haters or people who don't like it, or people who are neutral who think like you only like it because of a specific thing, or you think it's smart, or you think it's pretentious or smart to like this band. I know people, and I don't know if they mean this as me being pretentious, but I know people who think like I'm fancy for listening to jazz, Or like people think like people have literally told me like, wow, like you're really being smart. And like it's weird because jazz was pretty like the common music back in the day. Like for example, I had on like a Miles Davis record back in college, and one of my friends said, wow, you're like really into the jazz, you're really being classy and whatnot. And it's funny to think like this was just like the music people listened to back in like the 60s and whatnot.
Well, I think what's remembered from the 60s and the 50s is the stereotype of the beatnik. And so, nobody really thinks of beatniks as well-balanced people. So, I think it's just that gets stuck in their heads.
Yeah.
And I think, to be fair, I think jazz it's such a different form of music.
For sure.
Compared to rock, that I think, some people could find it to be a little too heady for them. Like our friend Andrew, great guy, knows a lot of great music.
Great guy, is wrong about jazz. Yeah. Emphasis on the wrong.
I he's not wrong about jazz. He just, I think for him, he looks for something else in music, and I think he finds that jazz isn't as focused for him anyway as as something like rock would be, which I would argue is in a way sort of the point.
Yeah. So in other words, what you're saying is he's wrong.
No, I think it's just like he has a different opinion.
I'm yanking your shit, obviously. I'm just being a dick.
Yeah. Well, I'm used to.
Yeah,
that.
as opposed to when, as opposed to what. Anyway,
it's something that we pass around to each other. It's like herpes.
Yeah, it's just like that.
Yeah, exactly. But when you bring up fans, I think it's like, to go back to the artist being horrible. I forgot about this example of Brian Eno. I don't know if you remember this when his album came out last year, that he had like this 7-page report about it, basically.
I fucking hate when people do that. Like when fucking Childish Gambino, like his album Because the Internet, he released a goddamn screenplay along with it.
Oh yeah,
this is a man who I enjoy some Childish Gambino. This is a man who on the album, one of the lines is, "Girl, why you be lying? Girl, why you Mufasa? Yeah, mi casa su casa, gotta strip it like Gaza. Got so high on volcanoes, the flow is so lava." Like, it's like, why the fuck? Like, the fact that like he released like a movie script where I think like Rick Ross is his dad or some bullshit. It's like, it's really bizarre. But it's one of those things where like people literally, when they were talking about it, they're like, "Wow, this is such a deep thing," and I gotta read the script to understand it and whatever. It's like, why do you what do you need to read to understand, girly, why you be lying, you Mufasa? Like, I totally agree, and I think you mentioned that like with Brian Eno, it was something about like a ship or like some history of something.
Yep. It's about the ship. Well, so actually, I actually have the entire thing right here because
are you gonna read all 7 pages?
No. I just so a couple months ago, because I've had this this idea of like hermeneutics in art. It's something that I've thought about for years, and I wanted to talk about it to my mentor in school, and so I wrote him this little essay, and I quoted just a very tiny portion of what Eno said about his album The Ship, and I have to read this because it is just funny. All right. One of the starting points was my fascination with the First World War, that extraordinary transcultural madness that arose out of a clash of hubris between empires. It followed immediately after the sinking of the Titanic, which to me is its analog. The Titanic was the unsinkable ship, the apex of human technical power, set to be man's greatest triumph over nature. The First World War was the war of material, over by Christmas, set to be the triumph of will and steel over humanity. The catastrophic failure of each set the stage for a century of dramatic experiments with the relationships between humans and the worlds they make for themselves. I was thinking of those vast Dun-Belgian fields where the First World War was agonizingly ground out, and the vast deep ocean where the Titanic sank, and how little difference all that human hope and disappointment made to it. They persist, and we pass in a cloud of chatter.
Wow. and like, if you haven't heard it, like the album, it's a pretty good ambient album. So like, just this is kind of what Jimmy, what we're talking about is like,
Yeah.
You read that and then you listen to the album and you're like, that was not necessary. Like that
exactly.
purports a meaning and an inspiration. Which if that was his like inspiration, cool. But like you listen to the album, like this is a good ambient album, I guess.
Yeah, see, exactly. Like it's just I mean, it's like I like all the musicians we've noted here. I have nothing but respect for Brian Eno as a musician. I think he's arguably one of the most important musicians of the modern era,
for sure.
Just sheerly because of his his involvement in the ambient movement. But seriously, like I mean, this was like maybe a seventh of what he wrote about this single album, and it's just like I think I don't know what's more annoying is that he has to explain all this to us like we're all children, or that like that we're somehow expected to sort of catalog it and mesh it with the album itself.
Well, see, that's kind of, I think, the bigger problem here is that oftentimes when especially, and I feel like I bring up Kanye like every conversation, but like
you have brought up Kanye in every
he's
episode,
like so relevant just because like I've had people explain to me why his lyrics are so genius and why like his beats and everything's so genius, and like when they explain it to me and I take it and I listen to the album, it blows my mind that they think that like somehow makes up for the fact that the music isn't good. Like, first of all, like a lot of times it doesn't even matter. Like, it's like, oh, okay, I guess I get that. Like, he'll make quotes about like different fashion things. Like, oh, well, he wore that polo that one time. It's like, oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. The album's great now. Like, it's the fact that like the idea is that if only you had this extensive outside knowledge, you would somehow understand and appreciate the music, and you need that to understand it. And like there's music I listen to that, and like we both listen to, that I would classify as pretentious, but it's enjoyable to listen to as it is. You don't need the explanation. You don't need like to read the dissertation about the music to appreciate it and to enjoy it. It's good on its own.
Like, for an example, John Zorn's album Inner Zone is highly influenced by the works of William S. Burroughs. And but you don't really need to have read Naked Lunch to listen to Inner Zone. You can enjoy it as a musical piece. If it's more like if you're a big enough fan and if you're interested in the background of it, by all means.
Exactly.
Because I think you can actually find some cool stuff. Like, I could switch this over to film. Like, I'm a really, really big fan of David Lynch and David Cronenberg. Like, I adore their movies. To the point that I've watched like hour-long interviews with them on YouTube just to get an idea of what they're thinking when they're making certain things, and and I don't do that so I can understand their films better. It's more like because as someone who because I enjoy their work enough that that I take interest in how they think and how they work behind the scenes.
Exactly. Yeah.
But the thing is, it's not necessary. Like, and I think the other thing is, it's not necessary to interpret a piece of art as the artist wants you to. I think that's something a lot of people don't realize, that your interpretation is your interpretation, and arguably that's the most important part. Aside from just enjoying the music, like that's something that another thing that people don't seem to understand, that like art is meant to be enjoyed.
Yeah, exactly.
It's meant to entertain you. It's not, like, I think, there's obviously a philosophical aspect of it, but, I think that philosophy can entertain you if you want, but I think at its core it's meant to, sort of, embrace you in a way. So to go back and say that this, that this interpretation is wrong, that, what so-and-so is saying about this work is entirely right, and your interpretation is entirely wrong. Like, I actually wrote my my senior thesis in college about this in regards to Slaughterhouse-Five, because people were I kept reading these articles where people were just convinced that Billy Pilgrim was insane or that he was psychologically damaged to the point that he was imagining like Tralfamador and everything, and I was like fuck that. I'm not saying that it isn't real, but there's a certain level of ambiguity to art, and I think Vonnegut ups that ambiguity like considerably. So to definitively say like this is Billy Pilgrim has PTSD. Mm-hmm. It's like I mean technically PTSD wasn't even like it didn't even exist in the DSM until just I want to say until the 90s even or something.
No, it was a while.
But it's just like I like you like what you like and you see what you want to see. Like I love hardcore punk, and I'd say a majority of hardcore punk is influenced by politics. Mm-hmm. I'm not a political person by any means, but I enjoy that music because I like the energy of it. And I like the attitude to a point. Like I like that idea of just being able to think for yourself. But I really couldn't give less of a shit. If how much like Jello Biafra hates Reagan. So like it's just like enjoy it the way you want to enjoy it. It sucks that some people have to ruin it for everybody.
Yeah, no, I think that there is merit to kind of like you said, like you enjoy a piece of art, whether it be a film or an album or whatever, and then you go and kind of dive more into their thought process just to appreciate it more. I mean, that's great. I think, like you said, people kind of flip it. Is that like if you don't like it, it's because you don't understand it. Like understanding something and diving more into their process isn't just a bonus. It isn't just something you use to grow your appreciation. It's somehow necessary to appreciate something. And if only you read, Childish Gambino's script, if only you read Brian Eno's, paper about the Titanic and World War whatever and shit like that. If only you'd done that, you'd love the album. And of course, that's preposterous. I could I could think of a number of albums that like have intense like for example Gorguts, Colored Sands. Obviously there's a lot of spiritual themes, a lot of influences of that, and it's fascinating to hear Luc Lemay talk about his themes and especially how he's influenced by classical music and blah blah blah. That's great. If I put that on for someone who doesn't like death metal and then say, oh, just like listen to Luc Lemay talk and listen to people talk about, it's not going to make them like it. Like they're not going to suddenly like technical death metal because they understand like the influence behind it. So while I do think there's a place for understanding something, it's pretentious to think that you need or this somehow elevates art beyond the very fact that people enjoy it or not. And yeah, I mean the most important thing is that you enjoy, and whether you enjoy pretentious art or you enjoy, I guess, normal art or whatever that means. It really boils down to like the stature or the quote unquote like larger meaning of a piece of music is not necessarily what's most important. Especially it shouldn't the music shouldn't come secondary to that, or shouldn't trump the fact that you either like or don't like music.
I mean like when it comes to like lyrical and philosophical themes in art, I tend to honestly put those by the wayside. I mean, if we're gonna stick with music, I think I've talked about Kendrick as much as you've talked about Kanye. That like To Pimp a Butterfly, like it's like it's not like I don't hate Kendrick. I just it's more like it's just not for me. Like the music just did not appeal to me. And so I'm not going to go any further than that. It's even if like for example, like that that Kanye song with Through the Wire that he supposedly recorded with his jaws like wired shut after a car accident.
That actually that did happen. I mean, he actually did record with.
But like like. I tried to listen to this song. I remember a while ago, so my opinion will probably change if I listen to it again. But I really didn't like it. So it's like even though I really like the idea behind it, if I can't get past the general aesthetics of an art, if I can't enjoy those, I'm not going to enjoy the rest of it. You know?
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually a great example of, I really don't like how 50 Cent's voice. I don't like how he sounds, and like how he sounds like he's mumbling. And one of my friends was kind of gave me a hard time. He was like, well, I mean, obviously his voice sounds like that. He has like, because he's been shot in like the face and what, he's been shot like an absurd amount of times. So like he's had reconstruction in his jaw, so he doesn't talk well. And he made that seem like as if that fact like would make it so that I would like him. I was like, I still don't like how it sounds. Like, yeah.
So if 50 Cent sounds like he's mumbling because of all the times he's been shot, what's Future's excuse?
You get some cough syrup, pour in some Sprite, okay. You got yourself a good time. That's the excuse.
Because I mean, like when you're like mumble, right? Like he's like, oh, he mumbles. I'm like, dude, what rapper doesn't mumble today?
Oh, jeez, that's a good point. Well, no, that's an artistic choice, though. Somehow that's now okay.
That's an episode all unto itself.
Mumble rap. Oh no, that means we have to listen to mumble rap, though.
Oh yeah, so never mind. Episode canceled.
I do like the vibe. Like I can put on a Future album and vibe to it. Like I like the
I can't.
I like the beats. I like put it in the background. But like as an actual like rap album, I mean, it's not. You can't understand what he's saying, and when you can, it's just not like enjoyable. It's not. It's just It's status quo. Like it's not even necessarily bad. Like that I think that's not to get off too big a tangent. That's like probably my biggest problem with modern rap. Is that like the lyrics aren't even necessarily bad? It's just tired. Like it's the same content. It's just packaged slightly, and sometimes it's not even like packaged like there's a lyric like I got no I'm not a doctor. I got no patience. That like idea has been rapped by so many doctors. I mean, so many doctors have rapped that line. So many.
There's only one doctor of rap, sir.
Geez. So many rappers have rapped that line and whatnot, and any number of like, I got so much money, I fucked your girlfriend.
Yeah.
But anyway,
bitches and hoes. Yeah. Well, I think speaking of that, like on to flip it over, like think about like. Wu-Tang Clan, like, I love me some Wu-Tang, man. Like, I'm all about that. The lyrics, I mean, they can range from, pretty funny to just sort of stupid.
Yeah.
And, but I listen to, I like Ghostface and I like Jizza, not because of what they rap, though sometimes sometimes I do appreciate some of the hooks that they come up with, but on the whole, it's mostly because the way they're able to make their words flow. I think that's just such an amazing art to me. Like, and I enjoy it. Like, I give them all the props in the world just for that alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And they make it sound good. And also, it's one of the things that I have to consider when I listen to old rap and like the lyrics aren't as great. And there are some rappers that Rakim, Biggie Smalls had some like great verses that are still great to today's standard.
Oh my God, Eric B and Rakim, man, paid in full.
Yeah,
fucking love that album.
Exactly, but it's one of those things where it's kind of like death metal bands back in the day. Like they weren't as fast or weren't as technical because that just wasn't what it wasn't done yet. Like there wasn't something to emulate and then grow upon. Kind of like with nobody could have imagined someone like Aesop Rock like back because like hip hop was really. Essentially was just a glorified metronome and somebody rapping about like the streets and whatnot, like, and now it's gone like to these multi-syllabic rhymes and wordplay and whatnot and referential. It's grown so much because we had a groundwork of just like Run DMC like A B C A B C, and now it's like if you break down the lyric, the rhyme scheme, it's like fucking insane.
Yeah. I mean, even though it's used a lot, the use of today, like the use of a triplet, I think is really cool. It's something that it's been used in hip hop since its beginning, but and it's been taking prevalence now with Migos. Mm-hmm. But I still think that's a pretty cool way of shooting those rhymes, dog. God, is it obvious that we're white, Scott?
I don't know if that was clear, but I think after this episode, it is abundantly clear.
Oh yeah.
Oh boy.
All right, I think that maybe that's a signal to wrap this baby up.
I think I was gonna say we've gone off the rails, but I think the train blew up a while ago. I'm not even sure where we are right now. But
I mean, like I don't even think that blew up. I think I just disintegrated it.
We're just kind of like laying on the side of the road at this point, or the side of the tracks. But thank you for listening to us. Initially talk about pretension, and then talk about I don't even know
meaning.
So yeah, what even is meaning? What is pretension? What are we doing here?
What is reality?
What is this? What are we? So
all right.
Anyway, so just something to think. And the main reason I wanted to have this discussion is because I'm a firm believer in kind of like what Jimmy said is enjoy what you enjoy, but I think it's important to kind of have a reason why you enjoy something. Like just not only just to talk with other people to explain to them this is why I like this is why you might like this, but it forces you to appreciate and be more critical about what you like and pushes you to listen to more music. Because why do I like this? What else might I like about this? What similar things would I like? What might I want this other artist to do? And so seeing as pretentious is a highly used term, I think it's important to be able to describe music in a way that's accurate.
Or to put it simply, take Socrates. The unexamined life isn't worth living.
Exactly. So next time you call something pretentious, ask yourself, is it?
Yep.
That was my deep philosophical.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. that was great.
Okay. Yeah. All right. You kind of. That's like. It's like ending a gymnastics routine by breaking both legs, but that's fine.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see you guys later.
All right. Bye.